Folks, we're back here at halftime, 42-0 right now, James, in favor of Brockport. Didn't see it coming like this. I don't think you did either.
No, I mean, I knew that this Brockport team was talented, and I knew that this Hobart team had some pieces that they needed to fill in, but I've been associated with Hobart football in one way or another since the fall of 1992. I don't ever remember a game that was this lopsided, especially in the first half. I mean, there's been some, playoff games against top teams that Hobart's lost to, like Mount Union and St. Thomas, but this is totally different. Normally, Hobart's way more competitive. It kind of reminds me of my freshman year when we played Dickinson, and we got the halftime stats. Thank you very much. And let's rattle them off. You know the score, and the first down's just about as bad for Hobart fans. They were Brockport 16 to Hobart's 3 first downs. 306 passing yards for the Golden Eagles to start off. Actually, Joe Germanario was 17 for 17 just before an incompletion very late in the second quarter. He finishes the first half 19 of 21 for 306.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And he didn't have all the touchdowns for quarterbacks for his team. We'll look at that in a moment, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, receiving the main target, as you may have seen on our Twitter feed, was Hubbard, 110 yards already and a touchdown. He had a 57-yard reception for a touchdown early in the game. Brown also doing it for the Golden Eagles with 59 yards and a touchdown. And Benson, only 2 catches, including a 77-yard touchdown and score.
That was the first play of offense for the game for Brockport.
It's sort of an auspicious note for the Statesmen. They were in trouble early on because, literally 17 seconds in, 77-yard pass. Less than 6 minutes later, a 2-yard run by Justin Morrison. So far this half, he has only 32 yards, but he's only had, they haven't really needed to run it.
Speaking of Justin Morrison, let's see the touchdown that he scored right now. And this was in the first quarter, second touchdown for his team total. These videos are coming from our Twitter feed, just so you know.
Morrison up the middle, and that's
Morrison from about Brockport, 2 yards out.
Yep.
And so that started the onslaught. Or not? That was actually part 2 of the onslaught, I should say. Then we have a nifty little play that came after Joe Germanario's helmet came off, and that was this play as Jason Helwig was under center.
Helwig keeps it, and that's a Brockport touchdown.
And you can see him getting celebrated by his team there. Things didn't get any better, really, for Hobart as the quarter continued. That was 21-0.
Yep.
A little bit later, about 4 minutes into the second quarter, Tyree Brown took a Joe Germanario receiver screen, and here's what happened.
Germanario connects with Brown for an 11-yard touch.
11 yards out officially, and
then things got a little chippy.
Well, they did. Trying to get to the next one for you, and you'll see this was the one that made it 35, and this is a good you make the call moment. We're going to kind of try to play it back a couple times for you at home and see what you think. You make your call on this one too, JB, as we play it.
Well, yeah, we were standing right in the back of the end zone directly in front of this play as it unfolded. Initially, there was actually a face mask on Joe Germanario, but he eluded and then made the pass to Hubbard, who was open in the middle of the field. Hubbard battled through some tackles, and as he was lowering his shoulder to try to cross the goal line, sophomore cornerback Jared Leak came in with looked like a shot with the shoulder. The instant replay, though, if you slow it down and given the sort of the environment we're in with leading with the helmet and other rules, got Leak ejected. From what it looks like on the slow-mo, probably the right call, although I think he didn't intend to lower the boom on him, so to speak. It's just sort of how it played out, which sometimes it does in football. But that made it 35-0, and Hobart probably should have just tried to run the clock out, but Ryan Hoffman got into some trouble, and he threw an unfortunate pick six to the senior strong safety, Matt Arita, who took it back 60 yards to the house. And that's where we stand. I mean, the Statesmen basically let the clock run out on the first half. That was a pretty lopsided half of football if I've ever seen one, Frank.
Out-yarded by 299 yards was Hobart, 78 yards in the half. They're averaging only about 2.9 yards per play, and Brockport is averaging nearly, let's call it 9 officially, 9.5 perhaps, yards per play.
It looked a little promising early on when, obviously the first play of the game, touchdown, was a little bit of a shock. But then it looked like Brockport was going to go back in and score again, but the Hobart defense forced a turnover, and it made me think, all right, we maybe get a game here if they can come back and
in the red zone, no less.
In the red zone, but no dice. I mean, Statesmen only 1 of 6 on third down. They've been penalized 5 times for 39 yards. They've had the 2 interceptions. So just, I don't know. I saw a comment from Keith McMillan of D3Football.com, wondering, is this because Brockport is that good and wanting to try to get to that Sag Bowl in Shenandoah, Texas, or is the Statesman team really not that good? All I can say to that is that there's a lot of new faces on the Statesman roster, a lot of numbers and players that I don't recognize. There's a lot of first years out there.
And kind of a very quiet attitude even on the sideline. We talked about the quietness coming into the game. I've been looking over to that sideline, mainly on the Brockport sideline today.
Yep.
But I've been looking over there, and it's been kind of dead quiet over there. And yeah, I understand the score, but you just don't see the motivation. And one of the players that was beaten on the last touchdown, you try to give a little positive reinforcement to a Hobart player, and he's looked at us and sort of said, a little weakly, we're coming back in this game when it was 35-0. Good attitude, but at the same time, this game's not going that way. I just can't see it going. It's at halftime. They can do, the equal and opposite thing, but not with this team on the sideline.
I think it was actually on the kickoff, but
yes, it was.
Yeah, and I think if I'm the Statesman, maybe it's not necessarily trying to come back in this game. It's just trying to come back next week and beat SUNY Morrisville at home. It would probably take a small miracle or a big miracle for Hobart to get back in this game. I think at this point, the Statesmen just have to focus on trying to get better at executing their offense. There were a few drops that could have helped sustain drives. There have been a few plays where the offensive line just got blown off the line of scrimmage, and they just need to play better. They need to execute better. And so if I'm Coach DeWall, I would just try to keep the guys focused on continuing to execute. Hobart did defer. They won the toss, so they'll get the ball back to open the first half. And it would be huge for the Statesmen if they could drive down the field and somehow get some points on the board, even if it's just a Kyle Hackett field goal at this point. Anything would be better than the goose egg that they're looking at right now.
Let's go to some halftime scores here. Some games have not begun, like Mount Union hosting Rose Holman tonight at 7. St. Thomas, number 3 St. Thomas against Trinity International is just underway. UW Oshkosh, the 4th-ranked team in the country, 7, Carthage 6 at halftime. That's a little surprising after Platteville had to claw their way back the other night against East Texas Baptist. Ended up winning that game 59-44 after trailing by, about 20 in a couple of occasions in the second quarter and third. It's interesting to see the WIAC teams maybe struggling a little bit here. Our score here, number 6, Brockport 42, Hobart 0. Frostburg State had beaten Stevenson on Thursday night 34-7. Del Val, the number 17 team, loses to number 9 Wesley 34-10. Back to today, Stout and St. John's are just underway, number 11 St. John's that is. UW Whitewater will take on Dubuque tonight at 7 p.m. Greenville at Wartburg at 8 o'clock, number 13 Wartburg that is. Westminster, PA 7, number 14 Wittenberg 20 at the end of the second quarter. Washington and Jefferson are blanking St. John Fisher down the street from us in Pittsford, New York,
Yeah.
10-0. A lot of pitches going on after yesterday in Massachusetts for me.
Yeah, I saw that score earlier, Frank. It was 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, so I guess
That's what it is.
The second, maybe it's a stalemate, but
or we just haven't got an update, so
Yeah,
that's when you
that's
go to
possible, too.
live stats in the new tab, and I'll tell you in a moment. We talked about Platteville East Texas Baptist, Monmouth take on Wheaton, they're just underway. Randolph-Macon and Johns Hopkins was the other night. Johns Hopkins won that 63-31. Trine 55, Manchester 7 from the other night. Rochester taking on Case Western Reserve tonight at 7 p.m. Don't forget. RPI and Allegheny. Let's try to call up a score on that one. Framingham State is leading Endicott, as you point out, 34-6 with 9:10 left in the third.
kind of what we expected, yeah.
Fisher now trails at halftime 23-0 against Washington Jefferson.
Wow. All right.
And
It's like the presidents are for real.
the presidents are being inaugurated as we speak.
Yes.
And the RPI game, this is one that a lot of people
Yeah,
thought RPI would
Allegheny.
run
I
over.
thought that was interesting. I mean, I know that they had a really solid program in the early 90s.
RPI is only up 16-10 at halftime.
Wow, yeah, because they were only, like a 1 or 2, 3 win team last season. This is not exactly a score that I think any of us would have expected.
Norwich trailing Morrisville State 33-13 very late in the game with only 2.5 minutes left. Buffalo State tied with Bridgewater State 23-23, 10 minutes left.
Interesting.
SUNY Maritime 22, Maine Maritime 0 at halftime. Union and Husson at halftime. It's 13-7 in favor of Union. Kind of the game we called for, close at first. We both thought Union would pull away in the end by 14 total. We'll
Should
see
we
what
check the
happens.
stats to figure out who's playing quarterback? Because we couldn't.
Oh, that's a good call, actually. We can do that.
Yeah. Speaking of stats, Ryan Hoppin for Hobart so far, 7 of 14 for only 61 yards. He's been sacked once, 2 interceptions. David Cruson, the freshman from Pennsylvania, came in and played a series for Hobart, only completing 1 pass for 5 yards. Interestingly enough, we mentioned at the start Dakota Harvey not in the game, so Statesmen have been leaning on players such as Alex Milliken and Mike Giacobbe in the receiving and run game. Chris Kukovic is a kind of a new name there. Leads the Statesmen with only 13 rushing yards.
To answer your question, Will Bellamy is the quarterback
Bellamy,
today for
okay.
Union. 12 for 17, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and has not been sacked yet. Good job by that young offensive line of Union right now. Let's look at some other local regional scores here. And Cortland leading Fitchburg State 21-0 right before halftime. Moravian 14, Kings 0. It started the third quarter. There's another MAC team struggling today, in Kings.
Well, we kind of saw that at the end of last season, and it seems to be carrying over into 2018.
We have McDaniel 14, Catholic 12 with a minute left in the first half. And Alfred State being blanked by Mass Dartmouth 35-0, 1:35 left second quarter. Remember, UMass Dartmouth hosts Del Val coming up. I believe it's next week.
Yeah.
As the
They
sun
also
goes behind the clouds here.
enveloped whoever was interested from Mount Ida, which was one of the D3 football programs and colleges that closed due to financial difficulties over the summer. I don't know how many of those former Mustang players transferred over there. They were basically exempted from. I mean, it's really not the same transfer rules of Division III, but still. It'll be interesting to see how that UMass Dartmouth team evolves.
Ithaca 24, St. Vincent 7, halfway through the
surprise.
second quarter. Let's see here. I had more for you. I swear I did. Really, I did. Widener, we know that game. A bunch of games that we don't have scores of yet from them not being inputted. Let's look at the Alfred Teal game real quick, though, live stats-wise.
We just got an update from our Twitter feed from @Sean_Martin77. Ross Jr. gets a step on a slant pattern, and Bellamy hits him in stride. 64-yard touchdown on the second play of the second half for Union. Looks like it's 20-7 with the extra point pending.
Alfred leading Teal 28-2 at halftime, in fact. And let's see if there are any other scores we can grab the live stats from for you folks. Oh, the Hartwick-Wilkes game that you were looking at. Let's see that one while we have a few minutes here still. And we're live here from Brockport, New York. Frank Rossi with James Baker on In the Huddle's Game Day Live feature. We'll be coming back with post-game interviews, so you'll want to come back definitely and watch us live post-game. Win, lose, or draw here 42-0. I can only imagine what this is going to look like.
You know, so let's you pretend you're Coach Mangoni. Do you take Joey out of the game and let Hellwig play the second half? Would you start pulling starters? I mean, they got to play Ithaca next week. I mean, Ithaca handling St. Vincent pretty handily. St. Vincent, I think, was a 1-9 team last year, though, so not really a big challenge for them. But, you know, Ithaca and Brockport have a history dating back to their Empire 8 days. Do you start pulling your starters and giving them a rest to get ready for Ithaca?
Well, I think you have to, probably midway through the third quarter. If this is anything 35 points or higher,
yeah.
I think you've got to. I mean, it's a hot day. You don't want people passing out from heat exhaustion.
Yep.
You know, you can only hydrate so much in this weather.
Yeah.
With all that padding. And, I mean, we were joking in the pregame.
Yeah.
It was my back to you folks, but when I put this on earlier, that was hellacious, man.
Yeah, I bet.
When I went full Corso on you.
Yeah, that looks like a toasty one, but
it's probably even hotter right now because I can't even hold in my hand. It's that hot.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hot, that's pretty much the entire Brockport offense. We can see off in the distance now the punter for Brockport. I think his last name is Jaeger. He did not
Zero
attempt
punts. Yeah.
0 punts. So he's getting his game work in at halftime, which, you know, it kind of tells you about what's been going on here. We're about 2 minutes away from the kickoff. As I said, Hobart won the toss, so they'll defer and start the second half. You know, it's possible we could maybe see, you know, David Crewson some more. Crewson, sorry, the backup quarterback for Hobart, just because, I mean, at this point, you know, what do you got to lose? But at the same time, I think it would be great for Ryan Hoffman's confidence to just keep trying to make those connections to his wide receivers and try to get something going in the running game to kind of just move the clock and move the ball around.
Yeah.
They got to get a positive out of this because at this point, I mean, really the only chance, you know, Hobart will have to get some redemption is if they can somehow win the Liberty League and maybe play these guys again in the playoffs.
Well, that's a long ways away,
yeah.
And we're about 30 minutes away of football time from coming back here, folks. So come back and look at our Twitter and Facebook feeds during the second half, and then Facebook definitely after the game when we'll take about 10 minutes before we'll get back on the air, and we'll do some post-game interviews and wrap things up here from Brockport. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. 42 points, though, would be an epic comeback, to say the least. We'll see.
Okay.
Stay tuned. We'll be back here, folks. Thanks for joining us.